So as we're in the process of sorting the bodywork out on this car, it's time to get the stance sorted out. So you can see at the minute that we've got a bit of reverse rake going on. So the back is pretty much a nice height. It's nice and low, exactly how I want it, but the front is still too high. It's on springs and shocks, McPherson shocks. You can see the gap between the arch. It's just not good enough. The back's nice and tucked. But I like to have the car sitting at sort of like a rake angle. At the minute it's a reverse rake going on at the minute, so we're going to drop it at the front. I've got some springs that are even lower than these ones. These are Spacs, and I think they're about 40mm lowered. We've got some lowering springs, Spacs on the back as well, but I've got some adjustable ones if I wanted to raise the height of the back up a little bit as well. So I want to transfer the weight to the front now, so we're going to drop that down. I think I've got ones that are 60mm lowered. So these are the springs that I've got. These are the ones that come off of my silver car before I went on to coilovers. So these are on a gas adjustable shock that I might even put on there as well. Just going to see how the Spacs standard shocks run. I want a nice soft like sort of ride. I don't want a harsh ride, but going to drop it on these. So as I say, these are 60mm lowered as opposed to 40mm. I think stock they're 30mm lowered anyway. So if you drop them 10mm, it don't really make much difference. And I don't want the front to be higher than the rear because it just looks stupid. So I've just quickly pulled off one of the shocks and I've stripped down it already, and you can see this is the Spac spring that I'm replacing with these springs here. And you can see I've just measured, they are 20mm lower, so these are a 60mm in total from a stock car. So you're going to see it's going to make a massive difference on the front, and we're not going to have that big arch gap that was in there. This car obviously ain't getting driven a ton on the road, so we don't really need to worry about how low it is on the front. Right, so this is one of the major problems a lot of people have with the Astra Gs. They don't fit these top mounts properly. So this top mount obviously sandwiches between the spring, and this rubber mount goes underneath the turret inside the engine bay. And then this top mount here clamps down on the turret and sandwiches it and holds this place so it doesn't move around and mess the geometry up of the suspension. The major problem is a lot of people sit above the turret because they're not being fitted correctly. Now that's normally because they have fitted the wrong size nut. Now you can see the thickness of the nut. This is the one you're supposed to be using. Somehow they get lost. When people take them apart, they start putting in these thicker nuts, and that just allows that top mount to sit proud, and it's going to mess up with the geometry when you're handling, when you're going around corners. You've always got to use this really thin nut here. You'll see exactly what I mean when I put this back in the engine bay. We have no gap between the top mount and the turret. So there we go, that's the shock all built up again. Nicely assembled, all looking clean and fresh. Obviously that's the old spring that come out of there, a lot higher than the new spring. Luckily you don't need spring compressors with these shorter springs on these cars, so you can literally just bolt them back together. No spring compressors needed. So you can see fresh bump stops in there. Get this back on the car, get it lower on the front. So there we go, all the shocks all fitted again. I was going to try and get a little clip of me fitting it, but it's impossible up in this arch. You can see how tight it is and that in there. Tried getting the camera in, it just weren't working. So I'm trying to get more videos of me assembling stuff because I know a lot of people like that. But you can see the shocks in there now, looking good. Just going to drop it back down. I've just tensioned up the top mount, so I'm just going to jack this shock back up now. So you can see I'm going to compress it almost so the car's off the axle stands, which it is. And you can see at the top here, the top mount is sitting nice and flush to the turret. That's exactly how we want it. Not sitting proud, using the proper lock nuts. You can see how that works. So that's how it should be sitting on the top turret. Right, so there we go. That's the car back on the ground now. You can see it's like flat. It's a flat level, maybe leaning down just a slight bit of rake. But I've just dropped it off of jacks, so the front hasn't even had time to settle yet. So I know from previous cars that I've had these springs on, it will drop about another 5 or so mil, and then it will look a lot better. So you can see the back and the front are pretty much level now, so that makes a massive difference to the looks of it, especially when you get the front bumper on a lowered splitter. It's going to look really aggressive, so that's what I'm just getting on with at the minute, just continuing to rub down this bumper, and I'm just sorting out some Cooper splitters and just trying to get that front to look aggressive as well, because the front on these cars I think lets it down a little bit, so it's nice to have a nice aggressive front on it. So you can see here how much better it looks on the front now. It's lowered, and the front bumper is going to be nice and low to the ground. I really did want it at probably another 5 or 10 mil lower. I'll see what I can do in the future, but for now that'll have to do, because that is the lowest springs I've got, 60 mil lowering. I've obviously got coilovers on this car, but they are maxed out as well. You can see there, they are absolutely maxed out, so I'd have to get shorter springs for them. So the rears are really easy to sort out on these cars, but the fronts ain't so easy. So you can see the arch gap on that, they're maxed out on coilovers, and we've got a little bit lower on this one. So what I could do is swap the coilovers to that and put a shorter spring on it, but for now I don't want the ride to be like really stiff and nasty on the road if I ever drive it. I think that's a nice compromise there. You can see how nice she looks. So this is the front bumper on the GSI, as you can see. So I'm just going to get ready for getting it into primer so we can get it to paint, because it's obviously faded and gone a little bit of a different colour to the rest of the bodywork. You can see that obviously in the side here they had aero catches because it was turned into a track car. So what I was doing is putting aero catches in the side and putting pins in there. You see that I've removed the pins, but obviously now we've got this hole in the bumper. Because this is a genuine bumper, it's an actual OEM bumper, I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm going to repair it and we'll use it as a spare. Now what I've done over this side already is I've already plastic welded in a bit of material here, so that I can actually fill the hole, and then obviously I've made up a tab here as well, because that had been cut off, because obviously the pins have been put through there. And you can see I've already filled this side in, just needs a little bit more filling and it's nearly finished. But I use a proper material. You can see it's properly flexible. The only real way to do these bumpers is with plastic welding. Don't think you'll be able to filler them from the back or whatever, they're just going to crack. But this material that I use is like a U-pole plastic filler, and you can see how smooth it goes. Just need a little bit more in here. You can see there's like a little pit there and a little bit of smoothing in, and that side's done and ready for primer. And then I just wanted to show you how I was doing this side. So what I've done already is I've prepped up the back of it so it's nice and keyed up. I've already made a tab up that goes onto this section here, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grind around here so I can actually plastic weld another section in. So what I do is I get some tape on the back, I draw it out, and then you have to use the same material as the bumper's made out of. So different bumpers are made out of different materials. So what I do is I cut up an old GSI bumper that I've got, and I cut out the section in here. Then I'm going to plastic weld it in and then fill it over the top. Now this is only going to be used as like a first bumper. I've got a brand new bumper that's going to be coming in, and I'm going to use that as well. But this bumper's been modified, and as it's a GM bumper, I'm just want to play around with this so I can get it to fit right, and I know exactly what to do with the next bumper. So the filler that I use on the bumpers are this 706 U-pole Stronghold. It's such a flexible, high density filler, and you can see here, look, high density filler for the repair of most plastics, including SMC and fiberglass. It's really, really flexible. As you just see me moving around the bumper, it won't crack as long as you don't put on a ton, like really thick section. It just will not crack. And properly key up the bumper, this will stick to it really like glue, and it fills in any little imperfections. It's the best one I found. The rest of them, as soon as you start moving the bumper around, they will crack. So I've just prepped up the bumper. You can see I've rubbed the paint off. Now the thing is with plastic welding, it's just the same as metal welding. You've got to make sure that the surface is properly clean. There's no paint to contaminate the weld. I've just went and cut out a section, exactly the right section that goes in there. What I've done is I just put tape on the back, drawed around the tape, then cut it out of a bumper. Now you have to make sure that it's the same plastic, otherwise you're not going to get a proper weld. So that is perfect in there. Just give it a little trim down, and then we're going to get to welding this in now. So the trick is to get this plug as tight as possible so you can get the best plastic weld. So you can see obviously I chamfered down all the edge so I could get filler material in here, and you can see how nice and tight that plug is. Now this ain't a bodywork guide, this is just what I've learned from experience, so don't think I'm trying to tell the body shop guys how to do things. You know, I'm just giving people a little bit of advice. And you're going to see that this, once this is all done, it's all welded in, sanded down, and it's going to be flush. You will not even know this repair's been done, and it will last forever because it will never crack again. Plastic welding is really the only way to fill in big bodywork holes like this. So there you go, that's all plastic welded in there now, and you can see it's just temporarily put in there just to tack on. You can see it's nice and strong, exactly how it should be. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to add filler material in to bring it up to the level of the rest of the bumper, and then I'll do it from the back as well, just to give it extra strength. And then once I skim it over with that body filler that you just see, you won't even notice that that's been repaired, and it will last forever. It won't crack, and it's in a high impact place as well, because you've got to push the sides of these bumpers in to the clips on the side of the wings, and it takes a lot of pressure to be able to do that. If you try to just put something on the back of this and filler it, it's always going to keep cracking. So the only really way to do this was plastic welding. So that's nicely all welded up now, proper solid. So I've just got over it with a skiv of that plastic filler. You can see I've done it from the back as well, all properly in there now. So just tested it. You can see I'm going to sand that down now. You can see how flexible that filler is. It's the only stuff that I've been able to find that doesn't crack when you start moving it. A lot of them say they're like plastic fillers, but they never are. So you can see, just going to sand that down now with a DA, get nice and smooth. Something that's really annoying, I just found out about this bumper. So obviously I've repaired that section there like you see, and I started to key up the bumper ready for like a primer, an isolation coat, and then putting on the top coat, which would be a solid coat. And then when I started sanding it down, I realised that whoever painted this bumper in the past has clear coated it. Anyone that paints or knows about painting knows that this is a solid colour. This is a red colour. The VXRs come lacquered, and this car didn't. And when you've got a clear coat over the top of a solid colour, it's an absolute nightmare to get off. So it's going to take me a few hours now to get through all that coat. I've spent probably 2 hours on it already and just done this section here. It's a really tough clear coat that I've used. Obviously there's a 2-pack one, so I've got to do the rest of the bumper now. Right, so where them aero catches were, that's all sanded down and ready for priming now. You can see you'd never even be able to tell that that had been done in the past. And, you know, high impact and absolutely no cracks. You can see nice and flexible, just how it should be. Right, so after sanding down the front bumper, smoothing over the parts that needed smoothing, you can see here I've just had to fit it and put on one of my Cupra splitters. You can see this one's extended, so this is one of the ones that I've done that had a little bit of work on it. So you can see it pokes out a lot more than the stock splitter would. And you can see this is one of the stock splitters over here, and you can see the lip on it is nowhere near as big. And obviously that one ain't been sanded down, this one's been painted black. And I might even go a little bit more aggressive on the front as well, so you can see how good that looks now. I can't wait till it's all painted up. Now, big decision. What I'm probably going to do is paint the whole bumper red, so that the bumper is in one colour. But do I put a gloss black vinyl in this section here, and like have an open mouth style? I don't know if I should on this car. I might test it. If I do it in vinyl, I can just check it, see if it looks good. And also another part is on the GSI, the section between the doors is normally black as well. It's got like a carbon plastic decal over it. Should I go black with that as well? I don't know if I like it. I like it like that. I think it looks really good. The stance on the car is looking brilliant now. That's exactly how I wanted it, with a rear a little bit higher than the front. I think you agree that looks 10 times better. So what we're going to do now is start spacing these wheels out and getting a better stance on it. So you can see on the rear of these cars, it's deceiving, sits in the arch so far. Now what I normally do is I chop away at these arches because they rust anyway. You can see they start to bubble under here. Obviously when this gets painted, it's all going to be mint. But what I normally do is I cut these arches flush. And I've done it on my silver car. I'll show you what it looks like. And then what I do is I space these wheels out. I'm going to probably do 20mm on the back here. So I'm going to put 20mm spacers on here and see how it sits on the arch, and then work out what I need to cut. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 10mm spacers on the front, just bring that out, and that's going to give it a really nice stance, because obviously this car is about looks rather than the way it drives. I used to have these on my SRI Turbo, these spacers I'm going to put on there at the minute, and they looked a lot better. So you can see here what I mean about how they're cut away. They're almost flush on the back here, and you still look good. They still don't look like they've been chopped about and knackered. I've took the spacers off the rear of these, so it ain't stuck out as far as they are normally, because they're going to go onto the red car. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. So you can see they can be cut, and that big lip gets taken off it, but it still looks good, because the modern cars don't have a lip on them anyway, and all it does is, as salt and corrosion and everything gets in here, I mean, even if I rub down there all the sand and stuff, you can see it coming out. That just sits in there, rots the arches away, so that's better to chop them out anyway, especially before I paint it. So to fit the aggressive offset wheels on the Evo as well, you have to do the same sort of thing, chop away at the arches. But it looks like someone who's done this one is an absolute noob at it, because you can see how bad it's been done. I mean, like, you can see chop marks into the metal there. So this is all going to be done properly. I think the bumper's been cut out as well. So you can see how badly it's been done, and that's something that I can't deal with. So I'm definitely going to be doing that properly. That's the plastic part there. It's obviously been pulled off at some point, so it's not been glued on properly, and you can feel that there's a nasty lip in here still that the wheel was probably caught on at some point. I'm not sure, maybe the old tyres did, because that needs to be sorted out, so that'd probably be pulled off. And I'll do the same on the back of this, and it just allows you to be able to run wide offset wheels without any scrubbage if you do it properly. So let's move on to the wheel spacers now. So what we're going to do is we're going to run 10mm spacers on the front. This is a setup that I've run in the past, so I know it works. And then we're going to run 20mm spacers on the rear. You can see that these are hub centric spacers as opposed to like a universal style spacer. So these are 5x110 or 5x1/8 spacers, so like they're like a Saab or whatever. But you can see they've got a 65.1mm bore, so they'll be perfect and hub centric, so these spacers won't move around. You can see with a universal spacer, they've just got like any size hole in the middle. When you bolt these on, the wheel is going to shake, wobble, whatever. It's really dangerous. You can see on these ones as well, you can see that they fit perfectly because these ones are 20mm, so they have to be bolted to the hub. So you can see that these bolts go through here and bolt it to the hub, and then obviously goes into the stud just like it would on the normal wheel bolt. You can see, as you see, it's the right size because there's no movement there. And that's perfect. So that's exactly what we're going to be using on the car, and we're going to obviously put these on now, see how it looks. So you can see here with the 10mm spacer you've still got the lip for the hub, whereas with the 20mm spacer you obviously need the additional lip. That's why it's built into it, that's why you have to bolt it on and obviously have the hub. So when you're doing this, obviously use 10mm longer studs as well, or bolts, whatever you're going to be using. Otherwise you're going to have the wheel coming off, and that's not what you want. So onto the rear, you can see I've put the 20mm spacers on there now. You see these ones are actually bolt-on ones, and the great thing about it is you can use stock size bolts because they just bolt on like a normal hub, and then you've got the extended lip for the hub centric style. And these will sit nicely. It will push it out, you know, to the lip of this arch, and I'm going to have to cut it, but that'll just allow me to be able to mark it around there and get that cut off, and that way we'll have no more rusting. You can see the paint flaking off, and it's just a design flaw on these cars. Luckily it hasn't pushed to the outside of the lip, but you can see they rust all along here, so cutting them off is the best way anyway. I just cut them all the way up to this arch spat, and then once it's painted, look great. And there we have it, the wheel spacers are on. You can see how much better that looks. Look at that rear wheel poking out now, and not sunk up in the arch anymore like they was before. You can see it literally sits flush with the arch, absolutely perfect, just tucks in there. So you can see there's not actually a ton of trimming that actually needs to be done. Just cut off that lip and that fit in there nicely. So much more aggressive, and I know I can't really show you from the back at the minute, but it makes the car look so much wider, especially when you're sitting there from the back. I'll be able to show you that when I pull the car out, but you can just see the stance on it so much better now. So very happy with how that looks. That's exactly how I wanted it. So I knew this setup would look good because I've had it on other cars in the past. 20mm on the back, 10mm on the front. Well on the way now to getting this car on the road, and I think you agree it's looking a lot better than it did when I first started. So the smooth bumper is going to look great. Not going to run a front number plate on there. As I said to you, let me know what you think about running the black insert or leave it red. The fog lights, because of the intercooler at the back, I won't be able to run fog lights, so I'm going to run ducts there and run them to the brakes, because I'm going to put big brakes on the car. I've got some brand new side strips that go onto the wings that hold the bumper on as well. These are, you know, these always foul, and you've got the nice fresh connections there that rust out and the bolts snap in them. So also got them. There's the part number for them if anyone needs them, 905595500. It comes with everything you need, all the rivets and everything like that go into the wing. So we're going to get them on. It just helps that bumper clip right into that wing nice and securely without popping out. That's proper common problem in the Astras. So I'll just give the crash bar a quick trim up so it sits lovely and spacious between the intercooler, so it's not going to touch there. You can see I've just trimmed off the bottom of it, sort of sits at an angle so I can pull the intercooler further outwards. So one thing that annoyed me about this loom is this coil pack plug. It was always like broken, the casing had come off it or whatever, so I sourced one for it. So I'm just going to repin that now. You can see on these they have like a casing that goes around them, and this one doesn't. So it's just little things like this that are bugging me, so I'm just sorting little bits out like that now. So I find one of the easiest ways to do this with simple plugs like this is you just do one at a time. As you can see, like I'm just going from the right to the left. It's a lot easier. So you just de-pin it through these holes in here with a de-pinning tool, and then you can just literally pull these out with the rubber grommet. You pull the springs back out, which I'll show you in a second, and then you just literally clip them back in. So here's a quick close-up of what I mean. You can see on that right side where I've already pulled the spring back outwards, and then that side's where I've depinned it, so you see it gets pushed in, and that's how it allows you to pull them out of the plug. So once you've took them back out and you're going to push them back in the plug, you obviously need to pull that spring back out before you do so. So that's the plug all changed over. It's got a nice fresh plug on there now. So while we're on the coil pack situation, I'm going to pull these plugs out. So I realised that I'd put in iridium 8s because that's what I had laying around at the minute. So you can see, try and get the light on that. So there you go, BKR 8 EIX. Now these are too cold for this car. On a stage 3 car, the max I'd run is 7, stage 3.5 car, and I wouldn't run these to like 450 horsepower plus. And what happens with them is because they're too cold, you can see they're just not cleaning. They're not self-cleaning properly. They're not getting hot enough, and you can see they're just not burning properly. So I'm just going to run the standard VXR plugs in this at the minute, 6s, and then I'm going to change to 7s when I get a pack of them. It's just I had these hanging around. These were brand new. So one of the things that always bug me about the interior of these cars is these leather around the handbrake, around the gear stick. You can see how they wear. It all starts peeling off and looks absolutely dreadful, especially when it starts flaking off inside the car, going everywhere. So you can see, just bought some fresh leather. This is proper Italian leather as well, none of that cheap crap. They won't use the good stuff on the actual cars themselves. You can see others, it wouldn't peel off like that. It's not proper leather. So we're going to get to doing that now. Get this gear stick one done. It's pretty easy. Now you've got the cutouts in it already to go through the slots, and then it's just a case of clipping them underneath that plastic part. This part here, you just need to staple them along the plastic as well. Very easy to do. So we're going to swap them over now. So it really couldn't be any easier to do these. You literally just pull the leather that's sandwiched in between here, in between this plastic, and just pull it out all the way around. And just to refit it, obviously you just do it in reverse and push it in with a flathead screwdriver. So really not hard at all. So if you're suffering with wear on your one, get out there and do it. Just order it off of eBay. Genuine leather, properly stitched. Get a quality one, not a Chinese one, because they're not real leather. So once it's off, you're basically just left with this plastic retainer. Then these prongs obviously go through the leather like so, and then you just fold it back over, push it back in with a flathead screwdriver into the clips inside here. That grips it, stop it coming back out. So onto the handbrake gaiter now. So you can see here it's stapled to the plastic, which makes it a little bit more difficult for the home DIY person. So obviously you need a proper stapler. This is a proper level stapler. This one is really strong and will go through the plastic. So you need obviously one that goes through the plastic, and you're going to have to sandwich the back here to obviously flatten off the back of the stapler. So I've just pried off these staples out of the plastic, and now we're going to get to fitting the new one. Should look really nice when it's done. Right, so I've just got the fresh handbrake gaiter fitted, and you can see how nice that looks. Absolutely brand new, and it's actually made out of real leather this time instead of the fake leather that comes from the factory. Obviously I'm in the process at the minute of tidying up this interior. What I'm having trouble with at the minute is to find this colour match that this centre console is. So the GSI has like an anthracite or a gunmetal style centre console, and all this surrounding plastics, but they're in black. And when I've tried to find brand new ones from GM, they want 170 quid for these ashtrays. I've got about 5 of them, so there's no way that I'm going to be buying one of them just because it's grey. So I'm going to try and find that colour. It's not anthracite because I've tried that. It says on the OPC manual that it's gunmetal, and I'm trying to get a good colour match for it because obviously this centre console is pretty good. That's the leather gaiter that's going to be going over the top of the gear stick. Probably going to put a gear stick razor in here at some point as well, just to pull it up a little bit. This allows for it because it's got a little bit of longer leather. And what I'm going to do now is change out this steering wheel, because this steering wheel was just a temporary one that I put in here. See, it's got no steering controls and it's got a lot of wear on it. So I've got one on the other car. So I've just pulled off the airbag at the minute. I'm going to get that out. So the steering wheel on this car is almost perfect. It's got no wear or anything on it at all. A little trick that I've done, because this is obviously a track car as light as possible. It's got no airbags in it, turned them off. You can see that this plastic cover has got no airbags in it at all. So what I've done is I'll show you when I got it off. It's just basically a cover, so it looks like it's got an airbag in it, but it hasn't. Easy enough to get these off. Just T30 Torx in the back of here, gets the airbag off, and you can pull the steering wheel off. So as you can see here, these are the extreme lengths that I went to on this car just to make it as light as possible. Obviously this housing is aluminium, and I just emptied it out of the airbag, so it actually weighs absolutely nothing, but it still bolts in and looks like an airbag for like on the road MOTs or the police or whatever. Right, so new steering wheel is on. What I'm probably going to do is use this airbag cover because it's a lot cleaner than this one here that's actually got the airbags in it. You can see I put the steering wheel controls back in as well, because on the track cars I obviously cut them out because they're no use. They don't work with the steering and they don't work with the radio. But on this car I'm going to get the subloom that goes in the back. That's going to be able to control the aftermarket radio with them controls. So last but not least for this episode, I'm going to put some wind deflectors on. Now you can't have these cars without wind deflectors. They just improve the look of the car. You can see how nice it looks. I've put them on the RS Turbo. This hasn't got it, and you can see it looks a bit plain in comparison. And obviously when you're on the motorway you can have the windows down without having the wind blowing in your face. Excuse how dirty the car is, because I haven't washed it in about I don't know how many months, and it needs a paint anyway, so there's no point. So we're going to get these wind deflectors on. Just got to get the little clips. I've got about 5 or 6 sets of these, so I'm just going to pick the best set, the cleanest set, and get these on. Right, and there we have it, end of this episode. So the wind deflectors are on. I think you agree the car's looking really good. When the front bumper's all painted up, it's going to look even better. And I really like the look that the wind deflectors give you. The RS Turbos and the Astras, they just look really good with them. So this is all done now. Leave it in the comments section what you think, and what you think the progress of the car has been, and what you think we should do in the future. Stock wheels, you know, I really like the stock wheels, the Snowflakes. They really go with these cars. Vauxhall done a great job with them. Probably going to leave them on for a bit, especially now they're all spaced out and looking aggressive.